There are many SAAB Doritos throughout history that have stood the test of time and failed miserably at finding export customers. But only one shines in its ability to intercept supposedly uninterceptable spy planes, and go street racing on your local roads right after that. That's right, scrubs, I'm talking about the Viggen. The SAAB 9-3 Viggen is a limited edition high-performance two-door sedan produced between 1998 and 2002 in collaboration between SAAB and Tom Wilkinshaw Racing, outputting 230 brake horsepower in all 4,600 examples produced during its limited production run. Wait a minute. Hold on, something isn't right. Well, until I find the actual script for this video, let's have a small advertiser break from today's sponsor, Conflict of Nations. Conflict of Nations is a military-themed strategy game set in the late 20th and into the 21st century, featuring real-time combat system where players control nations, their economies, and armies in a battle for world domination. In Conflict of Nations, you use deep strategic planning and tactical execution to conquer the world in matches that can last up to weeks against up to 128 other enemy players. Mobile game sounds boring? Don't worry, this is actually a PC game with a mobile port that's fully cross-platform. Come on guys, I know you're just gonna love the grindy research tech tree with hundreds of different units across different branches. Oh man, feels right at home with the snail. And if that doesn't sound interesting enough to you, then download the game today and use my link down below or the QR code on screen right now to get the Epic Gamer Donut Pack that includes an exclusive gift of 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium account. So go ahead and try it today. What are you waiting for? Oh, you're still waiting for me to find the actual script for the video? Okay, fine. The SAAB 37 Viggen is a high-performance, single-seat, single-engine Dorito designed throughout the 60s and entering service in 1970 as one of the most advanced multi-role aircraft in the world for its time, serving in roles for the Swedish Air Force such as a prime fighter interceptor, ground attacker, anti-shipping bomber, reconnaissance aircraft, trainer aircraft, and high-performance sports car for almost 4 decades until it was replaced by another IKEA canarded Dorito with horrible sales record. So whether you are like half of the Swedish males who like the Viggen, or like the other half of Swedish males who like the Viggen, then strap into your SAAB and enjoy this video. The story of the tufted duck begins in the early 1950s. At this time, the Cold War was thawing out and growing hotter day by day. And while Sweden's aircraft industry was one of the most advanced in the world at one point, that point was a very long time ago. The existing selection of planes was growing obsolete against the newest designs being tested or even entering service at the time. And not wanting to be up-tiered with a 300% booster, SAAB got to work on their next generation of aircraft. However, due to budgetary constraints in Sweden at the time, it was decided to not only combine all the new planes into one multi-purpose aircraft, but to acquire some technology from the Americans to expedite production of this aircraft. While initially envisioned as a strike fighter to replace the A-32 Lansen, the new A-37 project was further evolved in requirements to replace the aging J-35 Draken as a dedicated fighter interceptor as well. SAAB was quite fond of Doritos at the time, and decided to keep things simple by making their next plane also a delta wing, just like the last one. So throughout the late 50s and into the late 60s, for a whole decade, SAAB got to work on some serious R&D work to revolutionize the existing delta-wing fighter concept. Initially, the aircraft was intended as a multi-role aircraft covering both strike and fighter roles. The design began by taking the Draken and simply making it bigger, to carry all the strike ordnance required. The wings were redesigned and made larger to carry more weight and more hardpoints. The plane was also required to operate from stretches of road as small as 500 meters. So, to fix that problem, special canards were added to generate extra lift at low speeds. Unlike conventional canards, such as those on the Typhoon or the Rafale, these were not control surfaces. And also, unlike lift extension canards, like those on the Kfir or the Mirage 4000, these canards were not completely stationary either. These canards were placed in a special position with a special flap to increase low-speed lift massively, allowing the plane to take off from highways. Now, how do you land it on there is the question. The plane was so much heavier than its predecessor that conventional brakes in a chute were just not going to cut it anymore. Enter the Volvo RM8 engine, which is just a Pratt & Whitney JT8D taken from an old Boeing 727 airliner and duct-taped to a giant afterburner unit with a thrust reverser zip-tied on the back. Really crazy what those guys at IKEA can do with just an Allen wrench. Anyways, so we got an attack Dorito with a giant engine and a great thrust reverser and low takeoff and landing speed and all that, but what is it going to attack people with? You see, this is when we get to the advanced American technology we talked about that SAAB got to speed up the development. In an unprecedented move, during the early 60s, Eisenhower signed the Annex 37 Act, which gave Sweden access to America's most advanced aviation technology to help with the creation of the Viggen. While people didn't notice at the time, you gotta remember the US only did this so that Sweden would let them station Polaris SRBM-armed submarines around Swedish waters, which, may I add, was a very smart diplomatic decision at the time. The more you know. Anyways, now, being the most advanced aircraft of its time, the R&D program for the Viggen actually accounted for only 10% of all Swedish research funding in the early 60s. And from this research, we get some incredible technology stuck inside this plane. The first of which was the PS-37 Pulse Doppler Multimode Radar, which was one of the most advanced attack and navigation radars put into a jet at the time. And coupled with the advanced sensor suite and instrumentation, it was all managed by the legendary Central Calculator 37. The CK-37 was the first digital computer with integrated circuits put on a plane ever, and it replaced the need for having a backseater performing the roles of navigation, flight control, weapon aiming, and firing solution calculations, and all that bullshit. And the advanced tech did not stop there. You see, in the early 1960s, Eagle Dynamics had not yet released the DCS F-18 module yet, so LCD MFDs were simply not invented yet. So, what do you do when you need a multifunction display to manage all of these advanced systems? You literally make CRT MFDs, the first of their kind, and as far as I'm aware, the only ones, on a plane. No, seriously, LCDs didn't exist yet, they just made CRT MFDs, it's funny. Imagine this, it's the early 1960s, you have a cockpit with large screens, moving color maps, multiple functions, and all displays, and one of the most advanced computers in the world, managing stores, attack, navigation, and flight data for you. Now you gotta remember, the next most advanced attacker in the world at the time had a cockpit that looked like this, and instead of an advanced navigation and attack computer, it had a sauced-up 200-pound white boy from Kentucky sitting next to you and doing math on paper. And I'm not even going to start on this piece of shit from the Soviet side. I've had enough of this fucker after spending 2 months making the last video on it. Which you should totally go watch over here, by the way. Anyways, this highly advanced attacker was also fitted with all kinds of stores and ordnance to fulfill its strike role, ranging from rockets, bombs, guided missiles, and it even had ECM and countermeasure pods. Man, this attacker is so advanced, but I'm feeling like I forgot something. What could I possibly have jumped the gun on and forgot to talk about in this plane? Man, I'm really feeling like I should be gunning for something here, but I just forgot what it could be. Alright, I'm sick of the gun-related puns too, so I'm not sugarcoating this. They fucking forgot to give the strike aircraft a gun. Oh, you thought the Soviets forgetting to give their frontline bomber a bombing computer in the last video was the peak of Mount Stupid? Well, think again, because these guys ended up with an extra part from their IKEA flat pack that they didn't know where to put. Anyways, sadly, we are very late in the development of the plane and we literally cannot redesign the plane to include a gun, so what do we do now? Gun pod. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the FFV 30mm gun pod. I'm not even joking when I say the gun on this shit was an afterthought. SAAB needed a gun for this thing and fast, and the gun also needed to be compatible with existing ammo stockpiles and it should not require much maintenance. So do you know what SAAB did? They literally went dumpster diving in the scrapyard and they found their old retired A-32 Lancens and J-34 Hunters, and they just pulled the old cannons out of those and slapped it into a gun pod. I am not making this shit up. Anyways, the early AJ-37 Viggen also had a shitload of other goofy problems, but we'll cover those as we deal with them in-game, since this model is the first of the Viggens in War Thunder. The Strike Viggens are the earlier variant of the Saab 37 Viggen in War Thunder and found at the end of the attacker line in the Swedish tech tree. There is two of these things, so let's talk about the earlier model first. This is the AJ-37, a 10.3 strike fighter in the Swedish tech tree. Before you start wondering why a Mach 2 capable strike fighter with decent kit like this is at such a low BR, I must remind you of two things. The first is that you have no built-in flares, no built-in gun, and of course, as a Viggen player, no bitches. Second of all, you cannot have all of the good kit at once, making the first problem impossible to solve. You have 4 hardpoints. 2 of these are usable for air-to-air missiles or ground ordnance. The other 2 carry your gun pods or your BOZ-100 countermeasure pods. This means that you either have air-to-air or air-to-ground. Not both. And either guns or flares. And not both, unless you want to take one of each, and we'll get to why that's a problem in a second. Now, yeah, technically you could take one of each like I do sometimes, but unless you really know what you're doing, or you really like trolling people on the runway like me with the RB-75, which is just a Swedish renamed AGM-65A Maverick, the ground ordnance on this thing isn't really useful at all, even in ground battles, so just take the RB-24Js instead, which are just Swedish renamed versions of the AIM-9P, which is just an AIM-9J with a slightly better seeker that has radar slaving, which you really benefit from on this plane thanks to the PS-37 Pulse Doppler radar and its powerful TWS mode allowing you to slave locks right before launch. This early model of the Viggen didn't have a Pulse Doppler radar in real life, but that's besides the point, please don't tell Gaijin. The BOZ-100 countermeasures pod is an early version of the BOZ pod that we did a little trolling with in the Tornado video. This version comes with only half of the chaff, so instead of having like 600 chaff per pod like on the Tornado, you only get like 300. You still get the same 28 flares, however. Now let's talk about the guns. You don't have any built in, but you could take the cum pod. I call it that because it's abysmal dogshit, and jorking it crazy style until you blow a cum shot out of the cockpit at the enemy pilot may as well do more damage than these guns, and it will probably be easier to aim as well. Meet the FFV 30mm fuck pod. It's a special gun pod with an Akan M55 30mm cannon, which is just a Swedish redesignated Aiden 30mm cannon, which if you watched my Harrier video, you already know how dogshit this gun is. Oh, and if all the Swedish renamed designations of other British and American ordnance is starting to get annoying, then you shouldn't really worry because it's gonna get much worse throughout this video. Please bear with me. Anyways, the Aiden, as we already know, sparks about 102% of the time, with a 2% margin of error on that statistic. It also has a very low rate of fire, insane spread, and abysmal dogshit shell velocity, making hitting people with this gun feel like Parkinson's simulator compared to other guns found at this tier, such as the Vulcan or the Gish 30. And these problems are further amplified by the fact that unless you want to play a plane with 0 flares, you only have a single Aiden instead of the usual 2 found on the Harriers. Oh, and the gun pod is so far from the center that it really fucks up your aim due to the offset. Remember, this thing's guns come from old scrapped planes, so your gun is abysmal dogshit and you don't even get flares if you decide to take both. You get only 2 mediocre but usable missiles and only 28 flares and a metric shitload of chaff. Now, I want you to just put aside everything bad I just said about this plane for just a second, and let's talk about the reason this plane is cracked and borderline overpowered at 10.3. Unlike the last 10.3 ground attacker we covered on this channel, which went to 10.0 since that video came out because of how fucking bad it was, the Viggen actually has flares, the best radar by far at this entire BR range, and to top it all off, probably the best flight performance of any 10.3 plane, bar none. The F1, MiG-21MF, and MiG-21 SMT have worse low-speed performance, meaning you can just beat them in extended dogfights thanks to the canards and the powerful engine. And against the F-8 Crusaders and the F-5C Wallet Monkeys, you just force a one circle and win thanks to the incredible AOA that the Viggen can pull at medium speeds. And I won't even bring up the shit bricks like the Phantom, which you only lose to if you're retarded, or the subsonic attackers like the A-10 and the SU-25, which you can just walk away from thanks to your incredible acceleration and top speed. As far as I am aware, the only plane you cannot catch in this thing is the Kfir and the F-111 going full speed. But one of those you only face in a full up tier, and the other, well, it can't do anything besides run. So yeah, besides those, you can practically outrun or out-dogfight anything you face in this plane. Besides the F-5E, but that's not because the plane is good, but rather because of the severely overperforming flight model for the past few years, because Gaijin apparently knows more about how this thing flies than the fucking F-5E manual and keeps ignoring all bug reports. But that's a story for another day. Look, what I'm saying is, at 10.3, the AJ-37 is cracked, at worst, and downright overpowered, at best. It's got a little of everything. 2 usable but not very good missiles, and a dogshit gun, but it's still a gun. You get the single best radar at this battle rating by far, and 28 flares and a metric shitload of chaff at a BR where most of the stuff in your match won't even have countermeasures. And this is all carried by the fact that you have the flight performance to literally pick and choose whatever fights you want to take. Thanks to the Delta Canard configuration and the powerful engine, you can dogfight and win any plane you face except like 3. And against those planes, you just turn the afterburner on and walk away from them. Like, what the fuck is the A-10 gonna do? Go supersonic? And really, thanks to the incredible radar, you can always find the enemy. Pulse Doppler TWS at 10.3 is pretty fucking wild. By the way, I'm talking about air battles here, since I don't play ground enough to care or know how this plane would perform there. But if you are getting it for ground battles, just keep in mind that you trade your air-to-air missiles for the RB-75, which is a renamed AGM-65A Maverick, the worst variant of the Maverick in game, with a very, very shitty seeker that barely locks shit further than 4 kilometers away. Look, all I'm saying is, this bad boy is really slept on in air battles, especially with the painful stock grind it has. But I really recommend people give this thing a second chance, because trust me, once you spade this thing, it's very fun to fuck around in. But hold on to your horses for a second, because if you think the second Jaktviggen is this good, then oh boy, prepare to be fucking disappointed. In May of 1991, the Swedish government signed a deal with SAAB worth 300 million Swedish kronor. The upgrade and modernized 3 different variants of the Viggen, the AJ-37 ground attacker, the SF-37 reconnaissance model, and the SH-37 maritime recon and anti-shipping strike model, into a single, standardized, multi-role platform using advanced technology that was invented since then. The resulting program churned out what is called the AJS-37, an advanced multi-role variant of the Jaktviggen with many avionics and weapon upgrades. Before I talk about how the AJS flies in-game, I'm going to let my autism take control for a second as I nerd out over this skin, which is easily one of my favorite skins on a plane in-game, which you'll hear me say a lot in this video because damn, the Viggens get some really, really cool skins in-game. Anyways, do you see this spooky little ghost emblem all over the plane? Yeah, this is the squadron emblem, and this is a real plane. I'm not gonna bother pronouncing the name of the brand of cars made here, but here comes the fun fact. The logo for that car brand is also the same funny little ghost, as a homage to the squadron that used to occupy the airbase the car factory is at today. The more you know. Anyways, back to War Thunder. In-game, the AJS-37 is found at a BR of 11.0 and is artificially nerfed into the ground for some reason. Okay, listen, in real life, the AJ-37 was compatible with all kinds of new missiles, like the RB-74 and the RB-99, which are Swedish designations of the AIM-9L and the AIM-120 AMRAAM, respectively. Well, as you already guessed by the BR of 11.0, the AJS does not get the AMRAAMs, and the AIM-9L, let's just say this is the stupidest balancing decision I've ever seen in my life. To avoid confusion, for the next 20 seconds, I will simply refer to the missiles by the actual names in this section, not using the stupid Swedish renamed designation, because even I was driven crazy by that shit when writing the script. Okay, so one of the main upgrades of the AJS-37 is that you have 2 more pylons on the outer section of the wing, which you normally use for carrying 2 sidewinders for self-defense, which means you are now clear to use the inner pylons for air-to-ground ordnance, or the countermeasures pods. And now comes the super stupid balancing decision by Gaijin. So, in real life, you can obviously take all the missiles you want on all the pylons, and in-game, you can only do that with the AIM-9P. The new AIM-9Ls you have, you're only allowed to take those on the 4 inner pylons for some reason. Which means that if you wanted to run a strike loadout and use the 2 outer pylons for sidewinders to defend yourself as intended, you're stuck with rear aspect missiles only. At 11.0. Really, I don't know why Gaijin felt the need to artificially nerf the amount of AIM-9Ls you can carry on this thing. I mean, come on, it's not like you have planes with much better strike loadouts, better sensors, and more countermeasures that can also carry AIM-9Ls at a lower BR than the AJS-37, right, guys? Oh, yeah, you still don't have a built-in gun or built-in flares, and you must waste more of your pylons on taking the gun pod and the BOZ pod. You get 2 more sidewinders over the AJ-37, but you can't even take the good sidewinder model on those extra pylons, and to top it all off, you get none of the cool modern strike ordnance this thing had in real life. No, just none of it. It took almost 2 years of begging Gaijin just for them to add the RB-75T, an upgraded version of the RB-75 we talked about earlier. It still has the shitty AGM-65A Maverick seeker and motor, but the warhead is stuffed with TNT, making this into a small anti-shipping missile for some reason? What the fuck were the guys at IKEA cooking in the bathroom section? Anyways, gameplay-wise, you are just an AJ-37 with 2 more Sidewinders at a much higher BR. The problem is, while you have the flight performance of the AJ-37, which made it very strong at 10.3, at 11.0, the AJS-37 cannot say the same. There are planes that can dance on you easily, such as the MiG-21 BIS, the J-7E, the upgraded F-5Es, and God forbid you get up tier to face planes with great radars and radar missiles, or planes with IRCCM missiles, because surely you can deal with AIM-9Ms and Magic 2s using your generous amount of 28-hole flares, right? Look, while the AJ-37 was an absolute monster at 10.3, and I absolutely recommend everyone go play that thing right now because of how fun it is, the AJS-37 at 11.0 is hot shit and suffers from artificially nerfed loadouts too much to have fun, and even in ground battles. Gee, I sure hope there isn't planes at the same BR with much better ground strike capability. That would be very funny, right, Gaijin? Oh man, finally, the AJS-37 also has the same major problem as the AJ-37, where you need to bring at least 45 minutes of fuel for an ARB match, and at least an hour, in my opinion, for the big EC maps, because the engine on this thing wouldn't be made by Volvo if it wasn't the most inefficient gas guzzler ever. This isn't a joke. The Volvo RMA engine on these Jaktviggens has an abhorrent fuel economy, so please make sure to bring extra fuel on all of these. It's really funny how the 2 Jaktviggens differ, being opposite sides of the same coin. One is genuinely a very strong plane for its BR that's super fun to fly, and the other put me on suicide watch while trying to get footage for this section of the video. Anyways, enough about the Jaktviggens. We play air battles on this channel, so let's talk about the fighter model now. After the initial AJ-37 entered service in 1971, further improvements resulted in various tailored models which entered service throughout the following years. The SK-37 was a twin-seat trainer variant that came the next year and the year after that. The SF-37, a special recon variant with various instruments and cameras replacing the radar in the nose, but one variant proved most troublesome. SAAB knew the AJ-37 was not a fit fighter and subsequently devoted more development time to a dedicated fighter-interceptor variant of the Viggen. While initially intended to be a simple modification of the AJ-37, it spiraled out of control into its own plane. This was further bolstered by inspection of air defense network in Sweden by the Swedish government in 1970, which proved that Sweden not only needed a new fighter interceptor that can operate from the highways, but that new dedicated fighter interceptor variant of the Viggen was exactly what the Swedish Air Force needed. To put more pressure on SAAB, they were also given a bigger budget to cook with, and cook they did, and I ain't talking about the IKEA meatballs. The new fighter interceptor, now named the JA-37 Jaktviggen, where the Jakt prefix just means hunter, received a new plethora of upgrades to make it more suited for air combat. Ignoring the various small revisions to the airframe itself, the first major upgrade comes in the form of the Volvo RM8B engine, a more powerful version of the RM8A found on the earlier AJ-37s. The only 2 other changes noticeable from the outside were the larger tail fin, which could also fold 90 degrees to store the Jaktviggen inside special bunkers and tunnels like an IKEA flat pack furniture set, and replacing the clean bottom and auxiliary air intake with a special armament pack with, holy shit, they finally put a gun on this thing. Right, it had a new built-in Akan M75 cannon, which has almost double the rate of fire and a much higher shell velocity than the older Akan M55 Aiden meatball flingers found on the earlier Viggens. In addition to this, the Jaktviggen received the upgraded PS46 multimode pulse Doppler radar with advanced air-to-air modes and various look-down, shoot-down, and track-wall scan systems, based on those found on the AWG-9 from a Tomcat, making this arguably the single most advanced radar system on a plane at the time of introduction, at least for air-to-air. This all, coupled with the brand brand new SKC-2037 digital central processor, a highly advanced computer replacing the older CK-37 central calculator of the AJ-37, means that the mission profiling and attack planning on the JA-37 was all projected onto the HUD and the multifunction CRTs in the cockpit for the pilot. In addition to this, it also received 2 extra Sidewinder pylons over the initial AJ-37, an upgrade that the Jaktviggens would not get until the AJS-37 almost 2 decades later. And of course, after considering many options for radar missiles, it was decided to use the RB-71, a Swedish designation of the British BAE Skyflash. This was the single most advanced fighter aircraft in the world at the time of its entry to service. Oh, and it still didn't have flares. Those wouldn't come until the midlife upgrade, which resulted in the JA-37C variant, which is the one we have in-game, so let's talk about that now. The JA-37C Jaktviggen is an 11.3 fighter interceptor in the Swedish tree, and this shit is fucking insanely good, holy crap. Back when this thing was first added to the game, it was the single most broken top-tier jet in-game by far, and there wouldn't even be an equivalent until the MiG-23 MLD came out 3 months later. And even today, BR for BR, these two rivals are still questionable at best. The JA-37C is one of the best planes you could fly at this battle rating and the prime punisher of F-5C players. You can dance on them in the one circle, kill them in head-ons with radar missiles, or even troll their head asses with the tracerless shells from your guns, which gets EEGS radar lead gun sight aimbot. While no longer the most broken vehicle in the game by far, like back when it was added, the JA-37 is still a very strong plane today thanks to amplifying all the good things the AJ-37 at 10.3 had, and adding onto them as well, making this thing at 11.3 a force to be reckoned with. The better engine and revised airframe let you even go faster and dogfight even better than the earlier Viggens, and coupled with the built-in gun and countermeasures that this thing gets, you could practically shit on anything you face, even in a full up tier. The radar missiles for head-ons and the extra flares built in finally allow you to be even more aggressive than the AJ-37, which is just the push it needed to clap enemy cheeks at 11.3, something the AJS-37 at 11.0 can only ever dream of. So how do you play this? Simple. Play it like the AJ-37 at 10.3, but utilize your radar missiles, great radar, and extra flares to be a bit more aggressive instead of dying the second you try to take it head-on. The centerline gun with great RPM and velocity coupled with the radar lead aimbot means that you'll also have no problem handing out 30mm suppositories to any idiot that decides to pull into the one circle with you. I guess the only thing you gotta be aware of is the performance of the Skyflash missiles, which is basically AIM-7E2s, which isn't good when you'll be facing superior AIM-7Fs constantly. Oh, and the fact that recently Gaijin decided to lower the BR of the single best rate fighter in game because America suffers or something means that in a full up tier there is now one plane that you cannot dogfight. But other than that one annoying plane that's flown by autistic monkeys half the time, you can out dogfight practically anything you face very easily, and thanks to the incredible low speed acceleration and great straight line performance, you can just hit the gas and run away if the situation gets too hot. Another upside of the JA-37C is that it has one of my all-time favorite skins on a plane in game. The oh shit, I can't say that in a sponsored video. This is literally like George Orwell's book, 1984. Speaking of 1984, the fighter arena in Europe was evolving heavily at that time. The Soviets were about to unveil the best super-maneuverable heavy fighter in the world at the time, and to counter it, other countries began work on monsters, such as upgraded variants of the F-15, the Mirage 2000, and a weaponized rigatoni built at the same factory as the Fiat Panda. Sweden, not to be left behind, also got to work on a new variant of the Viggen. This new JA-37D variant would incorporate various avionics upgrades, a new missile selection, and various other improvements. One such system was the RB-72, a special short to medium range IR guided missile developed by Sweden for the Viggen specifically. Testing showed that the missile had almost the same performance as the Python 3, meaning it was very good for its time. However, Annex 37 struck once again, and thanks to political meddling and corporate pressure, Sweden was instead forced to buy the AIM-9L from America, which in testing was directly worse than the RB-72. The AIM-9L received the RB-74 name, and sadly Sweden split its R&D budget at the time and decided to not spend too much money on modernizing the JA-37, since there was this new plane called the J-39 that was beginning development around this time. And Sweden, and the aircraft industry of SAAB, was gearing up for gripping these balls. As a direct result of this, the new JA-37D was left in the slow cooker for almost a decade and didn't enter service until 1993, where multiple new advancements in missile technology allowed it to become much more lethal. This is the RB-99, the Swedish renamed designation of the AIM-128 AMRAAM, which in-game the JA-37D doesn't get. Man, I sure hope Gaijin doesn't add a copy-paste of the JA-37D where the only difference is that it gets AMRAAMs and then they make it a $70 premium pack. Oh yeah, that would be very funny, guys, right? Anyways, this is the JA-37D in-game upgrade of the JA-37C found at the higher BR of 12.0. In terms of gameplay, you're just a JA-37C, but with 3 major upgrades. The first is now your RB-24Js, redesignated AIM-9P, is replaced with the RB-74, redesignated AIM-9L, which is an incredible upgrade. The second improvement over the JA-37C comes in the form of SAAB's funky BOL rails. These rails go on the Sidewinder pylons and add 160 countermeasures each, meaning in total, you can have 368 countermeasures on the D model Jaktviggen. A nice upgrade from the grand total of 48 that you had on the previous model. There is also an ECM pod in the files for this plane that it used in real life, but that's not in game yet, so we'll ignore this guy for now. And finally, the best upgrade you get is one of the best skins put on a plane in game ever. Wait, how many times have I said this already in this video? Oh, who cares? Anyways, the JA-37D is literally just the JA-37C we already talked about, but at a higher BR because it fixes the 2 main problems that the Jaktviggen had. The first is the countermeasures, where you're not happy with having to fight high-power radar missiles or, God forbid, IRCCM missiles using your whole 48 flares, then fear no longer because the JA-37D gets access to 368 countermeasures in BOL rails. And the second problem, did you not like being limited to rear aspect IR missiles only? Well, you get the AIM-9L now, the second best non-IRCCM short-range IR missile in game. These 2 upgrades mean that now you have to worry less about your positioning and can focus more on being aggressive with this variant of the Viggen. And the only shortcomings of the Viggen finally fixed, this plane is now easily used to shit on enemy wallet warriors at this VR. Let me put it in simple terms. When you fly the JA-37, you no longer have to worry about SCP-3008, because trust me, we making it out of the IKEA with this one. Okay, hear me out, guys, alright? Look, so I was like, alright guys, this tech tree, Gripen, AMRAAM, Sweden, Gripen, AMRAAM, J35XS, $70 AMRAAM, Gripen, AMRAAM, grind, AMRAAM, Gripen. Turns out, J35XS, bad, no Gripen, no grind. No Gripen, no Sweden, no AMRAAM, alright? JA-37Di, fast. JA-37Di, AMRAAM. JA-37Di, AMRAAM, spam, grind, Gripen, AMRAAM, Gripen. We ballin'. Sweden, AMRAAM, Gripen. $35 on sale. Man, I sure hope Gaijin doesn't add a copy-paste of the JA-37D where the only difference is that it gets AMRAAMs and then they make it a $70 premium pack. Oh yeah, that would be very funny, guys, right? I love when Gaijin writes my own jokes for me. It saves me a lot of work when making these videos. Yeah, so basically in 1994, Sweden joined the Partnership for Peace program under NATO, meaning that despite not being a NATO member, they could still participate in military programs with NATO countries. As a result, a few JA-37Ds underwent a very slight modification that did nothing except redo the cockpit instruments in English instead of Swedish, to make it easier to understand for international pilots or something. It's not like the Viggen was exported to anyone, since all 3 export bids failed miserably. My favorite one was when they put Phoenixes on this shit and tried to sell it to Australia. What the fuck? Anyways, man, I sure hope SAAB learned from those, and that their next IKEA Dorito doesn't have a major export skill issue. That will be very funny, guys, right? Yeah, anyways, in real life, it's just a Viggen with English text in the cockpit instead of Swedish. Surely Gaijin can't fuck up a change that simple, right? Yeah, no, they did. The JA-37Di cockpit is still in Swedish, meaning that this is just the JA-37D, except it has amrams. And if you don't want to shell out $70 for this shit, then you could just grind the foldered version under the JA-37D in the tech tree, which is literally the same fucking plane with a different skin. They didn't even fix the Swedish text to English one in that one either. Me at the Gaijin office after a very hard day of pressing copy and paste. No, seriously, there is little to no interesting history about this plane, because it's literally just a fucking JA-37D that we already talked about, but with a localization patch applied in real life. That's the one change it had, and it isn't even fucking in-game, because Gaijin cannot be bothered to redo the text in the cockpit in like 10 fucking minutes. If you think this is an exaggeration, no, I make custom cockpit textures as part of some of my custom user skins, and trust me, when I say Gaijin's being very fucking lazy right now, I mean it. Anyways, as a JA-37Di, you get the same exact fucking kit as the 37D we already talked about. BLL rails, 9Ls, the whole 9 IKEA sections. Okay, who are we kidding? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or I should say, the IKEA Yule goat in the room, because of how crazy of a dumpster fire this is. While the earlier JA-37D was actually fun and very good at 12.0, this piece of abysmal, abhorrent, liquid horse shit is at 13.0, meaning you get up-tiered almost every game to get dingled by Strike Eagles, and Eurofighters, and Rafales, and yeah, you still have the same analog sectored RWR as 10.3 Viggens, by the way, which, don't get me wrong, was great at 10.3, but with no threat identification and like 4 sectors or something, yeah, versus the Fox 3 spam at 14.0, you may as well just put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye every time you get a launch warning. At least you get a few hundred countermeasures so you can panic spam chaff every time your RWR screams at you. No, seriously, just like flat pack furniture from the Swedish. Hell, I genuinely have no idea what kind of idiot thought this thing is fine to add, as it currently is. Okay, Donut, we get it. This plane is abhorrent dog shit and made you lose all 2.5 of your remaining brain cells while making this video. But I already bought it, so how the fuck do I play it? Okay, look, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Compared to the other Swedish premium jets, this is actually the best option, and that stands out as testament not to how good the premium Viggen is, but to how absolutely fucking horrible the Swedish premium options are. I love buying a premium Draken only to watch it get nerfed into the ground 2 months later, twice. Look, how do you play this thing? Well, at 13.0, AIM-9Ls are somewhat on the weaker end of the missile spectrum, but at least you have a decent radar with a TWS mode and AMRAMs at a comically low BR. So even in full up tiers at 14.0, as long as you play conservatively and keep distance to capitalize on the AMRAMs, you might be fine. But in the rare cases you get a down tier to 12.0, well, call me a guard at the Cincinnati Zoo in 2016, because these F4S players look like monkeys about to be shot. Look, this thing in a down tier really slaps. Like, seriously, what are the shit or 12.0 premiums supposed to do against the AMRAM to the face? But don't get the wrong idea. This plane is not good, especially not for this insane price tag. It's abysmal liquid dog shit as a premium grinder. But is it fun? Maybe if you like a little challenge where the plane doesn't completely fucking play itself due to being comically undertiered. Then honestly, yeah, you'll love this thing. Do you want AMRAMs at 13.0? Do you want something more maneuverable than a Phantom or a Sea Harrier? Do you want it to not be as comically handheld as the AV-8B+? Boy, do I have a plane to sell you. On sale, that is. But please don't buy this shit at full price. Like, if you absolutely need to blow $70 on a Viggen, DCS is right there. But besides that, especially on sale, if you need a Swedish air tree grinder, then honestly, give this thing a try the next time it's on sale. The Dorito flight performance will teach you both the advantages and the disadvantages of high alpha delta wing airframes, which make up a majority of the Swedish high tiers, making this thing a great learning tool for players new to the Swedish tree. And due to some of the parts on this plane being subpar and much worse than the competition, like the dogshit RWR for example, this means that player must learn to work around the weaknesses of the plane. And and weaknesses that are echoed across a majority of the Swedish Delta Doritos. And in this vein, the JA-37Di is actually not that bad of a purchase when on sale for 50% off. But besides that, please stay away from this thing and just grind the tech tree copy-paste version for free instead. Unless you are into exquisite cock and ball torture, because trust me, those Typhoons and Rafales in the up tier will be more than happy to hang you by the balls using their advanced missile and sensor kit. Playing this thing and being constantly up tier to 14.0 to face Strike Eagles and Typhoons and Rafales is like being invited to the Diddy party but being asked to buy the oil and apply it yourself. And in a top tier matchmaker dominated by these Euro canards, the Viggen finds itself right at home at the end of the day, and for all the wrong reasons. For this is the Dorito that sacrificed anything to live and everything to kill. So perhaps it is time to show these fake Cell Typhoon and Rafale kitties what a real Euro canard can do. Okay, let's build the IKEA flat-pack jets now. One nice thing you'll notice about a majority of the Viggens is that they have barely any modifications, and as a result they will often require less modifications per tier to unlock the next tier compared to other planes at this BR. Starting with the AJ-37, you get all your air-to-air missiles stock, so start with flare chaff so you can bring the BOZ pods. Then, get the new boosters and the airframe, followed by wings repair and engine. Now that you unlocked rank 4, get the G-suit and the cover. I have no fucking idea why the G-suit is rank 4, but oh well, better late than never. Now go back and work on the rest of the performance mods. For the AJS-37, it's literally the same modifications tree but with a new arrow added for air-to-air missiles, since you could carry more and better sidewinders. Also, the G-suit isn't at a stupidly high rank anymore, so start with flare chaff, followed by RB-24J, new boosters, then you could get the G-suit and the wings repair before moving on to the RB-74, engine, and the remaining performance mods. For the Jaktviggen, start with flare chaff. Then RB-24. The RB-24 is dog shit, it's just a renamed AIM-9B, but you need it to get the rest of the missiles, so yeah. At rank 2, getting the new boosters and the compressor. Unlike the Jaktviggens, we went for compressor instead of airframe to capitalize on the upgraded engine of the Jaktviggen. At rank 3, get the RB-24J missiles, wings repair, then move on to rank 4 where you'll get the G-suit, RB-71 radar missiles, then go back and work on the rest of the performance mods. For the D model Jaktviggen, start with flare chaff modification. Then the flare chaff modification. Again, I know this sounds stupid, but Gaijin did a fucky wucky and did not rename the second flare chaff modification into something like BOL, like it is on the other planes. This is the modification that unlocks your BOL rails, taking you from 48 countermeasures to 368 in total, so definitely pick that up. Then get the RB-24J to carry more of your shitty rear aspect missiles. At rank 3, start with G-suit, followed by the RB-74 so you can finally have all aspect IR missiles. Oh yeah, Forgot to mention, but the RB-71 radar missiles are stock, and you get them for free, so you never have to research them, so that's cool. Finally, get the engine and the rest of the performance mods. For the JA-37D, I start with flare chaff, AIM-9L, flare chaff again for the BOL rails, new boosters, amrams, G-Su, engine, and the rest of the performance mods. Or alternatively, just buy the $70 premium version that comes spaded already, you little pay-to-win scrub lord. It's okay, we don't kink shame on this channel, I won't tell anyone you bought it. And there you have it, that's the IKEA Euro Canard Doritos spaded and ready to rumble. And so, our Dorito journey through my local IKEA maze comes to an end, at least for now. It's really wild how SAAB built such an advanced single-engine Euro Canard, but fucked up the marketing severely and got cucked by the American export jets to the point where the IKEA Dorito failed miserably at finding any sales customer. Man, I sure hope SAAB learned from this and that their next IKEA Dorito doesn't end up as a laughingstock at the export market, right guys? Oh man, don't worry, in 2 years I might even make a Gripen video for the 15th anniversary of the last Gripen sold. Man, anyways, I really want to make a video on the other cracked up IKEA triangle, and as a result, there will not be a vote for next month's meme guide as we usually do, since I already decided I want to make a Draken family video. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to check out Conflict of Nations, the sponsors who made this video possible. By using my link in the description, you get an exclusive gift of 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium account for free. This gift bundle is only available for 30 days from the release of this video, so don't lose time and go download that shit right now to keep you entertained until my next video comes out. And until that happens, go out there, don't crash on takeoff, and go show those pesky SR-71 pilots what happens when you enter Swedish airspace. See ya next time.